I've badmouthed a lot of the modern SpongeBob episodes, and for good reason. A lot of them suffer from flanderization, being obnoxiously loud, and relying too much on this slapstick aspect of the jokes, especially when it comes to torturing Squidward. With that being said, that doesn't mean that in all my days watching modern SpongeBob, I haven't found a single good, or at least proper episode. In fact, there are some really good episodes that are worth talking about. But this one, it's great, to say the least. And you know what? I'm just gonna call it right now. This episode might just be better than the classics. You'll see why. So this episode is called Snow Yellow and the Seven Jellies. It's a 21-minute special for season 14, which aired just over a year ago at the end of 2024. And just in case it wasn't already obvious from the title, it tells a story of SpongeBob and the rest of the crew parodying the classic fairy tale Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, with their own style, of course. The episode opens up with Hans, the realistic sailor hands from the Suds, welcoming us to the new segment of the show.
Hello, I am Hans, and welcome to Fishy Fairy Tales.
Then he grabs a dusty book from the shelf with the exact same title, and we get to see their story from here on. Once upon a time, there was a happy little prince called Snow Yellow. He was the most cheerful person in the castle by far. Not only that, he also loved to feed the royal jewels to the peasants for breakfast and sing a song with the magical wishing well. What a lovely prince. Unfortunately, just like every protagonist in fairy tales, Snow Yellow isn't gifted with the most loving family member. He had a cruel stepmother named Queen Karen who clearly didn't love her stepson in the very least. Mainly because he was always happy for no reason. Luckily for the queen, the world gives her another reason to hate Snow Yellow because she just realized her stepson is square.
Here all of a sudden.
My big boy edges just grew in. Thanks for noticing.
And just in case you didn't understand why being square is a punishable sin, it's because how can there be two square beings in this kingdom? Therefore, since there are two square beings now, there has to be one that is the squarest in comparison, right? Well, what better way to get the answer than to ask the all-knowing magic mirror?
You, my queen, are square, 'tis true, but Snow Yellow is the squarest.
Needless to say, it was simply unacceptable for Queen Karen. This kingdom is too small for two square beings at once, so in order to become the squarest in the whole kingdom, she has to eliminate Snow Yellow. Actually, they didn't go that far with the stories. The queen just wants to de-squarify him, which is just as cruel, I think. But you know what? It's still gonna be tricky, because Snow Yellow could just regenerate, right? You could cut him up now, but he'll be back to square one, no pun intended, in just a few seconds. So I'm curious to see what she has in mind. So she immediately calls her trusty huntsman from the dungeon and tells him to take the prince to the forest and snip off his squareness while no one is looking. The fellow hunter resists at first, especially because he said he's just a truffle hunter and not a sponge slicer. But the queen wouldn't take no as an answer.
I'll cut off your corners.
So, with a heavy feeling, the hunter tries to catch up with the prince in the forest to execute his cowardly mission. At first, he tried to deceive the prince by saying he's hungry, so that the kind-hearted Snow Yellow would turn his back, giving him the opportunity he needed. However, when he saw Snow Yellow make a royal Krabby Patty on a golden platter for him, with pickles I suppose, the hunter just couldn't bring himself to harm the prince. Not only did he fail in his task, but the hunter would go so far as telling the prince the queen's plan to de-squarify him.
What? Why? When?
So the hunter told him to run far away, far enough to hide from the heartless Queen Karen. But just when Snow Yellow thought he was running away from the queen, little did he know a bizarre journey that was about to change his life was waiting for him right in the corner. Because it didn't take long for the prince to do something stupid, such as falling off the cliff within seconds. Now the prince was trapped in the deep, dark woods, which hosts a lot of evil creatures within it. Then, while he was trying to run from the evil creature, he came across a cute little hive in the forest, a place that was just perfect for him to hide for the time being. So he shrunk himself to get inside the hive, but what he found was a sticky situation, to say the least. The place was cute and well furnished, but it was so dirty because of all of the jelly. And since Snow Yellow saw 7 mini chairs with a name engraved on each, he thought, maybe if I clean this place, whoever lives here will let me stay for a while. So he did just that. In the meantime, the 7 jellyfish who lived there were all working in the mines. They're all just honest, hard-working jellyfish who mine the flowers of the sea every single day from 8 to 5, well, except one jellyfish. They lived peacefully far away from the castle, so you can imagine how surprised they were when they got back home and found a snoring monster in their kitchen. So they jumped Snow Yellow without hesitation, but luckily, the prince was immune to such blows because he's a sponge. All of them managed to calm down and have a good friendly conversation. Snow Yellow also explained how he ended up there in the first place. Meanwhile, at the castle, the hunter was feeding lies to the queen about how he successfully de-squarified the prince with no trouble, and the queen was gullible enough to eat the lies, but not with the all-knowing mirror. Needless to say, only cruel fate awaited the huntsman because the queen decided to feed him to her pet alligator. So the queen said, "Fine, I'll do the cutting myself." She went to put on her witch costume, then brewed up some poisonous chum and coated it in candy so that no one could resist. Without wasting much time, the queen found the prince easily and knocked on the hive while all the jellyfish were working in the field. Through her equally sweet words, she managed to convince him to eat the poisonous chum.
You'll be in a dehydrated sleep forever.
Dummy, his name, by the way, was just a few seconds late from preventing the evil deed on his own. He was just about to pick up his forgotten pickaxe at home. Luckily, he still managed to slip from the queen's robotic hands and send the SOS flare to all the jellyfish. But they were all way too late. Dummy said Snow Yellow was already dehydrated and the queen was already gone after eating every single one of their jelly patties. Sure. However, even I didn't expect all of them to hold such grudges and decide to hunt down the queen for payback. I guess that's blue-collar workers for you. The queen still had some technology up her sleeve, but that was still not enough to shake off all the jellyfish. They all followed her back to the castle, breaking through every wall of defense the queen possessed, before finally cornering her at the top of the castle, where they took their sweet revenge.
Screwdrivers!
I guess that's the equivalent to a slow death, right? Death by 1,000 cuts, death by 1,000 bolts unscrewed. Same thing. And now that the evil queen was gone, the jellyfish put the dehydrated Snow Yellow next to a dish sponge to keep him from getting moldy. They were all weeping because they lost a dear friend, even though their meeting was only for a brief time. But miraculously, their jet stream of friendship tears was enough to rehydrate Snow Yellow back to life again.
Snow Yellow? You're still alive!
And naked.
All of them hugged each other, sang one last song together, and they all lived happily ever after. What a lovely story. Now, if you haven't watched the episode yourself, I definitely encourage you to. You won't regret it. Now, you could probably guess why I think this episode might surpass the classics, right? No? Well, let me spit it out for you then. Again, as I mentioned earlier in the video, we got a lot of bad modern episodes with little to no story depth in them. Sometimes you just get obnoxiously loud ones, sometimes painful ones, and a lot of meh here and there. So, with that in mind, I always watch every new episode of SpongeBob with a cynical thought in mind, almost pessimistic even. It just comes as a habit to always look out for what's bad in the episode, or how can I nitpick this episode? Which is admittedly kinda sad because that was kind of unavoidable when you make a video about SpongeBob every other week. Or maybe it's just a me thing, I don't know. However, when I watched Snow Yellow and the 7 Jellies, I couldn't find anything bad in it, or at least not bad enough to point out to you guys for a video. Instead, I'm thinking I actually kinda liked it. Even more than a fish called Sandy from season 15, which a lot of people pointed out as a good benchmark for the newer seasons, right? They brought back the old animation styles, the color grading, the character-driven plot, etc. And while that is good, I think this episode does something even better in another aspect. Crafting a plot that combines the old DNA with a new plot they never explored before. Of course, it's not really a new plot in itself. Snow White is a classic fairy tale that is more than 200 years old, but I'm still really surprised at how well they integrated the concept with SpongeBob's own lore. The fact that they have to be the squarest of them all instead of the fairest, and they actually fit the character roles of Snow White and the Evil Queen accurately. Come on, that's both genius and hilarious. And if you're quite witty, you can spot a few more smart fairy tale references here too. When Karen was getting unscrewed by the jellyfish, she said, "Oh, what a world,"
Oh, what a world!
which is a direct reference to Queen Karen throwing some glass slippers in a glass cube early in the episode is from Cinderella. And since Snow Yellow can't get a princess to kiss him in this episode, they just make his costume as a combination of both Snow White and the prince himself. How cool is that? More than that, this episode actually had some brilliant musical aspects.
Wishing you well, wishing you well, wishing well. Yes!
There's almost no bad singing in this episode, which is rare in modern SpongeBob. I mean, they're still not as iconic as some of the classic songs, like Welcome to the Chum Bucket, Ripped Pants, or even Sweet Victory. But again, come on! This is what we used to have just a few years ago. And some of you guys said this song is a cult classic, which I didn't agree with, but you do you. Even when we're not talking about anything related to the fairy tale references, this episode is good on a technical level. All the artwork for the world is really, really good. I heard they all painted the background design with hands manually, and it would only get scanned later for digitization. Character-wise, it's nice to see Bubble Bass having a good heart and not always being a jerk. It's refreshing to see Karen and Plankton swap roles in the relationship for once. Karen being the evil mastermind, while Plankton just hangs there telling her all the obvious stuff. They should do this more often. The only downside for the character is that they somehow managed to put Grandpat here, which I personally don't like. I mean, you still had Pearl to fill the last slot, but whatever. Again, that's just nitpicking. Yeah, I still don't know why they didn't do stuff like this more often. SpongeBob is known for not having a deliberate crossover with any IP since day one, but they love to make classic old school references like this. I guess this is the first time they covered a fairy tale, right? Oh no, actually, they did Patnocchio back in season 11, but I'm not gonna talk about that. At the end of the day, Snow Yellow and the 7 Jellies is still my favorite pick for season 14. Does this episode surpass the classic episodes? I genuinely think so. Mind you, I'm not saying this episode wipes the first 3 seasons of SpongeBob. Those were magical. However, there are still some mid episodes compared to the rest. Squeaky Boots or Your Shoes Untied are the first that come to mind. So yeah, I think Snow Yellow is better. Or you know what? I don't mind swapping The Sponge Who Could Fly with Snow Yellow for their season special. I'd take it. It's always pleasant to find a good episode in modern SpongeBob. It kind of gives us hope that Nickelodeon is still capable of making a good SpongeBob episode even after more than 25 years running. It also feels like finding diamonds in the rough, which is very satisfying. Or maybe they were always able to, they just never had enough time or resources to make a good one for every new episode. Who knows? And you know what? That's still fine to me. Making mistakes and being idiots sometimes is still human after all. I know I did. On the other hand, if there's one thing that is always guaranteed to be such an idiot every other episode, It's them. I've always made a running joke about how Bikini Bottomites are such jerks and idiots. And wouldn't you know it, they had a big reason for it. So if you want to know more about the society of Bikini Bottom, definitely check out my previous video of why are the inhabitants of Bikini Bottom such idiots. You'll learn something about them. As always, I'll see you on the next dive.